So today, lesson 4, we're looking at two things. We're looking at axis intercepts, that is this video, part A, and then in part B, you'll be looking at when you have two lines, two different lines that intersect each other or cross each other and trying to find that point or that coordinate of intersection. So now let's look at part A. So part A is axis intercepts. So what that means is where one straight line, we have one line where that cuts the axis. So the x-axis or the y-axis. So what do I mean by that? If we have a look at this straight line, it has an x-intercept and it has a y-intercept. Now, not all straight lines have both of these. You may be able to think of some, the vertical line or the horizontal line. They only have one axis intercept. But if you, in this case, in the example you can see in front of you, we have a straight line that cuts both the x-axis and the y-axis. So where it cuts the x-axis, it's called the x-intercept, and you see that by the green dot. Where it cuts the y-axis, the straight line cuts the y-axis, it's called the y-intercept. So we're going to look at a specific example. We scroll down here. This is a straight line, and the x-intercept is where it cuts the x-axis. So the straight line cuts the x-axis here at x equals -4. The coordinate, we usually talk about a coordinate, is x equals -4 and y equals 0. So we can write it as a coordinate, -4, 0, with a comma in between those two numbers and round brackets. The y-intercept is when y equals 6. It cuts the y-axis at 6. And we write that as an intercept, as a coordinate, I should say, as 0, 6, because the x value here is 0, the y value is 6 at that green dot where I'm pointing to right now. So x-intercept is where it cuts the x-axis, y-intercept is where it cuts the y-axis. So in this lesson, you're going to be finding the x-intercept and the y-intercept of straight lines. And you're going to do that using Graphmatica. There is another method you can use. You can find the x and y intercept, and that's algebraically using algebra, but we're not going to do that in this lesson. So once you are ready to get started after you watch this video, you will open this worksheet, which is in the lesson, and you will do part A. So part A is finding the x and y intercepts and using Graphmatica. So I'm going to do the first example. I'm going to do question 1A to show you how to do this how to find the intercepts using Graphmatica. So if we scroll down, in part A, 1A, the first one says you need to graph the following equations using Graphmatica. Use your graph to write down the x and y intercepts. You have a gap there to do that as a coordinate. So we're going to graph first y equals 2x plus 1. So I'm going to open Graphmatica, type in y equals 2x plus 1, and I can see my straight line, and I can actually see where it cuts the x-axis and where it cuts the y-axis. So there's 3 ways you can find the axial intercepts, or in other words, where it cuts the x-axis and the y-axis, x-intercept and y-intercept. 3 ways. One way is probably the most obvious, just read it off the graph. We can just visually just see it off the graph that this point here, this coordinate is minus 0.5, 0, and this coordinate here is where y equals 1, and the coordinate is 0, 1. I can see that visually. That's one way. The second way is to use your cursor. Grab your cursor when you get that little plus or cross symbol, and move it over the axial intercept that you're interested in. And then on when you do that, on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you may or may not be able to see that when you're watching this video, but when you do that, on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, it will show the coordinate, and what I can see is minus 0.5, 0. And in brackets, it says 0, which means it's the x-intercept. And you can also do that for the other coordinate. Okay, and it will show that intercept again on the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You can try that when you do this. The third way, which is good, particularly good when you have decimals, and when it's not exactly on the axis, on an actual whole number, is to go to Tools, Evaluate. So you go to Tools, Evaluate once you've graphed your graph, and you have two options: solve for y, enter value of x; solve for x, enter value of y. So the top one, solve for y, enter value of x, that is to find the y-intercept. So remember, when you have the y-intercept, the x value will be 0. So to find the y-intercept, you always type 0 in the top box, and it will tell you what the y value is when x equals 0, and it is 0, 1. That's the coordinate 0, 1. So we just go to our y-intercept is 0, 1. Found our y-intercept. Again, you could have found that the other way as well. Another way, the way now, how do we find the x-intercept? Well, let me get out of that, delete that. I select this one, solve for x, and it's when y equals 0. So x-intercept, the x-intercept is when the y coordinate, the y value is 0. So just calculate, and it will tell me what the x-intercept is. X is minus 0.5 when y equals 0. Minus 0.5 when y equals 0. So if we go back to our graph again, there's a few ways you can do this. First of all, you can read it off the graph. Secondly, you can use your cursor. The third way is to go to Tools, Evaluate, and then you enter 0 in each of these separately, and it will tell you the coordinate you're after. So that is for the first part. As you so you'll do that for question 1 for each of these. Then you'll move to question 2. Question 2 asks you to write the equation of the line that passes through these 2 points. Now, this is something that you can actually do this if you think about back to lesson 1. We did. So what you would do in this case here, let me go back to this equation here and I'll show you. I'm going to delete this graph, right-click, delete graph. When you have 2 points and you want to find the equation, there is an algebraic way you can do it, but let's do it using Graphmatica. If you remember what we did lesson 1, we went to View, Data Plot Editor. And what we're going to do here is we're going to put in those coordinates. So let me just remember what they were, 1, 2, and the other one was 6, 8. So we're going to type them in. So 1, 2, 6, 8. So we've got those 2 coordinates in, and you'll notice that 1, 2 is here. I can't see 6, 8 because it's 6 is here, x is 6 is here, y is 8 is all the way up there. I want to see it. So I'm going to change my grid. So View, Grid Range. And I want to see it further up the screen. So the top. So I want it to be probably greater than 8. So let's call it 9. You can always go back and change it if it doesn't work. Now I can see my other point. Okay, so there we are. And now I want to draw a straight line through those 2 points. You don't need to change it back to a straight line graph. We did that in lesson 1. But if you didn't do lesson 1, you might want to watch that lesson to check how you need to go into options and change that. It's in lesson 1's video. But if you've done that lesson, you don't need to redo that, your Graphmatica will remember that setting. So then all you need to do, once you've put in those points, you can see them, just press curve fit, and it plots the straight line that goes through those two coordinates, which is quite handy. And what you can do now is you can just put your cursor over the top of that line, and on the bottom left-hand side of your screen, I don't know if you can see it on mine, on what you're watching, but it actually has the equation, and it'll say, what I can see is y equals 1.2x plus 0.8. Okay, so that's the equation, you write that down. So actually redo that and see that you can get that equation. And then when you do have a go at question, and you need to find the equation, you need to then place your graph in. When you have a go at question 3, 4, and 5, in each of these, we've asked you to write the equation of a line that goes through this point. So in part A, it goes through 0, 4. But we haven't told you another point. So the other point is optional. So your equation will be very different to someone else in your class, because they will. So I'll show you an example. So with 3A, find and write one equation of a line that has a y-intercept of 0.4. You may be able to do this without Graphmatica, but I want you to try and do it with Graphmatica. Try and find an interesting equation. So we're going to delete this. Right-click delete. I'm going to delete these points. Just delete, highlight and delete. Okay, so I think I said it was 0, 4. Yep, 0, 4. So we have to have that point. So 0, 4. I didn't give you another point. So you can pick any point you like. I'm going to pick minus 1, 3. Now, depending on the other point you pick, it might be, your line might have a positive gradient or a negative gradient. So it doesn't matter as long as it goes through 0, 4. That's all the criteria is for that question. So then I go curve fit, and then if I hover over it, I can see the equation of my graph on the bottom, and I can write that down. So that's, I guess, a bit of a hint on how to do question 3, 4, and 5. Now, once you're okay with this, you can have a go at part A of the worksheet. And once you've completed part A, you can then watch the next video.